Okay, everyone, let's continue on into Exploration 2. We're in Unit 2, Lesson 1. And basically, as you can see up here at the top, Exploration 2 deals with relating structure to function in living things. And this can be in cells, this can be in tissues, this can be all the way up to organs and organ systems, okay? So, it says here, the cells are fit for the job they perform. So basically, it just and this again, it extends all the way up through tissues, organs, and organ systems. The structure, the way that an organism, the way that its cells, its tissues are put together, is going to relate to the job that it does, the function that it has. So as we're looking here at our friendly neighborhood rat and the tissues that our rat has, it says here rats have long flexible bodies that can squeeze through small holes. Skeletal muscle tissue is made up of muscle cells organized into stretchy fibers. Next part, rats are omnivores, will eat almost anything they can find. The tissue that lines the rat intestine has finger-like projections that increase the surface area. That helps with digestion. And then finally, rats can remember food sources. The cells that make up the nervous tissue have long branching extensions. So we have a smart rat right here as well. The question that we have down below, I've highlighted the correct answers on that already. It says the tissue that lines the intestines helps absorb nutrients by increasing the intestinal surface area. The long extensions of nervous tissue connect the cells in the brain and other parts of the body. Smart rat. And finally, the muscle cells are organized into flexible fibers because muscle tissue elongates and contracts. So, rat muscles, just like human muscles, okay, like my biceps, is going to elongate and contract, and that's what actually moves my forearm here. And that happens all throughout our body with my hands as they're moving around and throughout any organism that is moving around like that. As we keep going, structure and function in organs, same basic situation here. The way an organ is put together is going to relate to the job that it is able to do. So as we look down here at question number 12, it's just kind of taking a look at some of these different structures and then the jobs that they do. So if we look at the stem on one of these flowers, we can observe that it is long and thin. Some functions that it's going to transport nutrients and stores water, and then also helps to support the plant upright. If we look at a leaf, we can see the leaf is kind of flat and green. It's a good way to be set up for its job, to capture sunlight for making nutrients, and the flatness actually helps to regulate some of the water loss that you can have happening there. Finally, for a flower, we can see that its job is to attract animal pollinators. Well, in order to do that, that's why we have a brightly colored flower. That's why the flower is located near the top. Normally we have a smell situation as well. We really can't observe that from the picture, so we can't really talk about it as a structural observation here. But all of those things, all of those structures are going to assist with the function of attracting animal pollinators there. Let's see, moving on to number 13. Leaves are made of a protective tissue that protects against water loss. And so basically we're going to compare and contrast the thickness of the protective tissue that you would expect to find on a leaf of a plant that lives in a wet habitat compared to a leaf of a plant that lives in a dry habitat. Okay, so basically, function-wise, if you have a leaf that is in a wet environment, it really doesn't, it doesn't worry. There's not a need for it to protect against water loss. There's plenty of water in the environment, so it can just get more water in whenever it wants. Now, if this plant is in a dry climate, okay, this protective dermal tissue is going to have to be thicker. Okay, and that thicker tissue is going to help keep water in, prevent water loss, because every droplet of water is precious if we are in a dry climate. So just depending on the function that's necessary, we're going to see different structures, different structural adaptations to the environment. Kind of going along with that, moving on up to clear to an organ system here, just more examples. We're taking a look at macaw in this case, but birds in general. As they fly around, it takes tons and tons of energy for them to be able to do that. So birds have developed a very advanced respiratory system that's just phenomenally efficient, way more efficient than what our lungs, our respiratory system are. Number 14, again, I highlighted the correct answers on that already. Birds have air sacs and lungs. When birds breathe in, oxygen-rich air fills the lungs and air sacs. When birds breathe out, the oxygen-poor air leaves the lungs and stored fresh air enters the lungs from the air sacs. This means that birds will always have a supply of oxygen-rich air. So they always have oxygen coming into their lungs and being transferred into their blood, and then that oxygen eventually being transferred down to their cells. Okay, so 15 goes right along with this. Number 15 says, describe how the structure of the bird respiratory system provides the energy the bird needs for flight. Okay, so the respiratory system increases the amount of oxygen that's available to cells. All right, because we're constantly bringing more oxygen into the lungs. We haven't really talked about cellular respiration yet, but oxygen is necessary to produce energy in the mitochondria. This is why you have to breathe, actually. This is why an animal dies when it suffocates. It's because it doesn't have oxygen to the mitochondria, therefore it doesn't have enough energy. Okay, but in this situation, more oxygen provides more energy to be used for flight. So the birds need to get lots of oxygen in so they can burn their food, so they can get lots and lots of energy, because it takes lots and lots of energy to be flying around and flapping your wings all day long. So very efficient, very well developed respiratory system, circulatory system as well, but really respiratory system that we find in birds. Let's see, next part, relate cells to organ systems, develop an argument that explains how an organism is made up of interacting body systems which are made up of cells. And it says explain how each part of the organization is made up of a system of interacting parts. Well, basically the big thing on this is that you just need to make sure that you have that hierarchy from cells all the way up to organ systems and organisms, right? So start off with a part of the cell theory. The cell is the basic unit of all living things. Okay, so we start with cells. Then a system of cells makes up a tissue. Put a bunch of cells together, you get a tissue, and then you keep going. A system of interacting tissues makes up an organ. A system of interacting organs makes up an organ system, and then organ systems interact to perform life functions for the organism. So if we put that all together, all right, so body systems, organ systems in an organism, all right, put all that together, that says, therefore, interacting body systems in an organism must be made of cells, because you can go step by step through each one of these parts to get from cells all the way up to an organism. All right, final part here. Exploration 3 is just kind of, again, it's just some more examples that we have of body systems here at this point, basically. Okay, so body systems interact to perform different functions, and we'll take a little bit of a look at some of our body systems here towards the end of this, but actually we'll go into more detail of that as we move forward into plants and animals. Okay, so number 17 says to look at the photo of the sailfish, think about what these organisms need and how they respond to their environment. So basically, if we have this sailfish, this is the sailfish right here, by the way. If we have the sailfish and it needs food, a response it might take would be to swim faster. Okay, that makes sense. It's going to go try to catch something. Okay, another need that we have down here could be to avoid predators. Same situation. Its response could be to swim faster if it's going to try to get away from someone. Maybe to zigzag or hide would be other responses. If our sailfish needs to warm up, one of the possibilities that it could do would be to travel to a different location. Okay, go somewhere where it's sunny. Go somewhere where there is a warm current flowing through. Okay, so you can control, and they don't generate their own heat because they're a fish, right? So they're going to have to get someplace where it's warm if they want to warm up. Other reasons they might travel to different locations, follow food sources, possibly find mates, lots of different situations that you could possibly have there. So a lot of these things are they're not just set in stone type answers. It's more of, if you're thinking your way through it and you have something similar to that, you're probably okay on the answers that you have on these. But these are kind of the book suggestions for answers here. Okay, so back to our cow from the beginning of this lesson. It says, in the cow, food travels through 4 different stomach compartments so that it can be fully broken down. What factor do you think contributes to the structure of the cow's digestive system? Record your evidence. Basically, the biggest thing here is that the cell walls of grass and hay are hard to digest. You as a human actually cannot digest these things. That's why you can't just, eat alfalfa or eat grass all day long. These plant materials need to go through multiple stages of digestion in order to be broken down into a usable form. So yeah, if you've seen a cow chewing its cud, basically it has eaten some grass, swallowed it down once, horked it back up into its mouth, chewed it a little bit more, swallowed it again, and eventually that grass breaks down into a point where a cow can get sugars out of that, which is, pretty cool that they can just, eat grass and eventually turn into like steak and hamburger in their muscles. But I don't know. That's me as a carnivore. So omnivore. I know I'm an omnivore, but I like to eat meat. So let's see. Last little part here deals with human body systems, and we're going to go into more on different systems and comparing them between different organisms as we move forward here. But this just gives a little synopsis of some of these different systems. It says circulatory system delivers nutrients and oxygen to all cells in the body. Respiratory system takes in oxygen, releases carbon dioxide. Muscular system moves the bones, causes the heart to beat, moves the food through the digestive system. Skeletal system supports the body. Nervous system controls body movement, lets you think about things as well. Digestive system breaks down food into essential nutrients, expels solid waste from the body as well. And then the excretory system removes liquid waste. This next part just has, kind of shows the interconnectedness of our systems. Really, they're all working together, but this just shows how some of them are working together. So for part A, if we just read the sentence, the muscular and skeletal systems allow the arms to move, spinning the wheels of this bike. The next one down, part B, the respiratory and nervous systems allow the student to breathe and read music. And part C, body functions slow down as you sleep, but they do not stop. For example, the digestive system continues to break down food, and the circulatory system continues to deliver nutrients throughout the body. All right, final one that we have here on this lesson talks about some more bird stuff, right, with our hummingbird. It says hummingbirds have small, weak feet and rely on their strong wings to move from one place to another. Describe how a disease affecting the muscular system would affect the other body systems of the hummingbird. Well, if you think about it, if the muscular system doesn't work, then the hummingbird can't beat its little wings and it can't fly. Well, if it can't fly, it's not going to be able to get to food, to the nectar that it's getting out of these flowers. If it can't get to food, cells aren't going to have nutrients that they need, and without the nutrients, the cells aren't going to have energy that's produced in the mitochondria, and those cells are going to die. Well, so basically, if just the muscular system isn't working, that's going to shut down the entire organism. It's not going to be able to survive. And that's some of what we're taking a look at with that cellular diseases project that y'all are working on right now, is how everything in an organism is interconnected, and a disease in the cells of one tissue will have a major effect on that whole organism. Okay, that's where we're going to end it for lesson 1 out of unit 2. Follow along with lesson 2 as we get to that. That deals with some specific